Welcome to the Women Majoring in Marriage podcast with your host, Janice L. Vance. Girl, if you are a married woman that desires not just to have a surviving marriage, you know, the kind that's just on cruise control, but actually want a thriving marriage, you are in the right place. If you are engaged, this show can inspire you to prepare for your marriage before preparing for that expensive wedding day. Oh, and all my single ladies out there that are in their season of waiting on God to send your husband, we've got something for you as well. Girl, marriage is not hard, but it certainly is work. So relax, get your pen and paper, and let us major in marriage.
Well, hello to all of my queens and welcome to the Women Major in Marriage podcast with yours truly, Janice Vance. I want to thank you, queens, for continuing to rock with me. I see you on all of my platforms. This is Women Majoring in Marriage, the Marriage Major. And I have several platforms. I have podcasts, which is where this interview will be on the podcast, Women Majoring in Their Marriage. And the podcast in the podcast, Apple, Spotify, you'll be able to find this episode. And then also, I have a YouTube channel, and that channel is called Women Majoring in Their Marriage. I just started that one maybe 9 weeks ago.
Okay.
And I thank you all for subscribing. I now have 2,100 subscribers, and I have had over 5,000 views on my videos. So I am so excited, and I could not have done it without you all. So I do want to thank you. Thank you, thank you, thank you. The Women Major in Marriage. A lot of people think that it's just for married women. This platform is not just for married women, it's really for all women, whether it be that they are married and not just want to just have a surviving marriage, but they're thriving to have a thriving marriage, or to the woman that is single in her waiting season, waiting on God to send her husband. This is for her. It's for that woman that is engaged, to encourage her to prepare for her marriage before she prepare for that big wedding day. We get excited about the wedding day, but marriage is a lifetime commitment. So this platform is all about finances, cooking, singleness, motherhood, divorce, anything. And my main goal is to allow people to get on here to share their story, because I know for a fact that our story is not just for us. God has taken us through some things and brought us out of those things. And I think that is so important when you share them, because somebody will be blessed. It will save somebody's life. It will heal somebody. You never know. You never know who that hears your story and will tell. So today I am so excited. When I say I'm excited, I am so excited to have with me Miss Mullins. And her name is Miss, so it's not like I'm saying the title. Her name is Miss Mullins. And you all not going to believe this. This is my cousin from Columbus, Ohio. We never met in person. Our family has a Facebook group. Thank God for social media. In that group, she's in there, and I've seen her post different things, and I heard her say a little about her story, and I've been said to her, "You're going to be on my podcast." I said, "You're going to be on my podcast. Just let me know when you're ready." So I thank God for her reaching back out to me and ready to tell her story that others might heal. You might not have gone through what she went through, but it might be something in it that will help deliver you. And then you don't know, her situation might be a situation that another young lady is actually stuck in. This is Domestic Violence Month, and that's why I actually wanted, she reached out just in time so I can get her on this month for domestic violence. I'm wearing my purple t-shirt for domestic violence, and
From a purple.
I'm a, I'm gonna tell I'm gonna tell a little bit about her. Miss is a 53-year-old mother of 4 adult children. She lives in Columbus, Ohio. Professionally, she is a project manager and a motivational speaker. She is a survivor of a horrific act of violence at the hands of her ex-husband. She have a love affair for sports and life. I asked her what would she choose for her subject for this platform, and she said a walking testimony. God blocked it. Right there within itself is powerful. And I know within that story, she's going to share with us what she feel comfortable with sharing, hoping that somebody, if it just touch one person or set one person free, it'll be well worth this interview. So I'm gonna give this over to Miss. We just gonna sit here as if I'm sitting on that sofa with her and we just talking, and she's gonna tell you all her story. Miss, just take us back to the day that I'm trying to see if I'm gonna let you I'm gonna let you do what you feel led. I'm gonna let you do what you feel like. You might not even be ready to go back to that point, but just share your in your own way.
Um, let's see. Well, I'll go back. I met my ex-husband on a college campus. I was there for homecoming, and I was already the mother of twins. Um, and so I was there visiting my brother. It was, he was at the school at the time, and that's where I met my ex-husband. We got to talking, and as I tell people, when I look back, he was everybody else's choice for me. Um, I was fine where I was, but it was nice to have, someone who essentially courted you. He was still in school. He played for the basketball team at the university. Um, but it was my dad's alma mater. So that was already a plus there. He wanted to pledge my dad's fraternity. That was a plus there. And everyone was, you need to settle down. You need to settle down because you got those twins. You need to settle down. Okay, well, maybe I need to settle down. I was 22 at the time. So, okay, well, I guess maybe I need to settle down, you know. And within a year, we were essentially living together. He was going back and forth. The school's about an hour away. He was just going back and forth for classes, that type of thing. Eventually got a job here. And for the first few years, it was good. He was okay with the ready-made family. We were good. Family loved him. It was eventually said he was the best son-in-law ever by my family.
Mm.
But after a few years, I just started noticing things. The honeymoon period, I guess, was like kind of over. He was
Uh,
very insecure. This is my hometown. He's originally from Chicago. He was, here in Ohio for school. But this is my hometown. Me and my dad know everybody. So I was a standout athlete. My dad was involved with the local politics. Um, we knew everybody. I couldn't go a place where I, didn't run into somebody I knew. And that started to become an issue with him. Um, Going to church became an issue. I grew up in church. My dad was a deacon. Um, all of a sudden we're arguing about going to church because, we get the church hugs. These is folks I didn't grew up with, in church and everything. And we fellowship after church, but that became an issue.
wow.
And eventually so my children would continue. to go because they enjoyed church. They were in youth choirs, at that point and everything, and they love hanging with their pawpaw anyway. So I just started calling my dad, telling my dad, can you come get the kids and they hang out with you? Essentially just stopped going to church just
Mm.
to get rid of that argument. He found out I used to date a guy that played for Ohio State, and all of a sudden I was not supposed to cheer for Ohio State.
Wow.
Um, just little things like that. Everything just started setting him off in one way or the other. So we got
Mm.
in arguments, but I was that chick. Okay. It was like I was the athlete. I wasn't just gonna take anything,
Mm.
So for a long time I didn't even realize I was in an abusive relationship.
Wow.
Um really it wasn't until the attack that I'm in an abusive relationship. Um, but still, you know, fighting for stability, fighting, wanting that two-parent home. We eventually had two more children together. And that's what everyone wants. Everyone sees you got the house, you got the cars, you have, the swimming pool in the backyard.
Right.
They see that, but I'm miserable in
Mm.
this relationship. My family didn't even realize how depressed I was,
Mm.
because it was always something. I coached, um, and I remember I was on the field with another coach measuring the long jump. And he comes marching out on the field because he felt like me and this coach were too close together.
Mm.
And so I didn't go to work with the black eyes or the,
Mm-hmm.
busted lips or anything else like that. We got in scuffling matches. And that was the
Mm.
other reason why I didn't think of myself as being in an abusive
An abusive
relationship
relationship. Right.
because we got in scuffling matches. If he hit me, I hit back.
Mm-hmm.
But he would always hit me, you know, in my back, in my
Mm.
shoulder, that type of thing. So there was never bruises that you saw or
Mm.
anything like that. I was too embarrassed to even tell my family because I have always been the strong one. I have always been the person that everyone else came to, you know,
Mm.
when my brother had issues with, you know, women that he would date, there are still probably two that are terrified to see me now, just because I was the protective one. I protected
Mm.
everybody else.
Wow.
So I never felt like I had someone to really go to or was too embarrassed to. And then again, he's the best son-in-law ever.
Mm-hmm.
Um, is all I'm hearing. And so I must be doing something,
Mm-hmm.
that type of thing. So it was hard for
Mm.
me to do it. There was a lot of infidelity on his part. I would constantly find women's numbers around the house or women calling the house even. Um, and then finally, this would have been me and him met in 1993. Um, at this point, it's like 2003, and I
Mm-hmm.
just had it.
Mm-hmm.
Um, this woman calls the house and she was devastated because she had asked him if he was married and whatever she had been spending, and they had been seeing each other for months. And I was like, yep, I'm done. If you're Why should I have to recognize this marriage if you're not? And I
Mm-hmm.
just start focusing on me. I had gained 100 pounds during that marriage, and
Wow.
so I wanted to focus on me. I did what I had to do to get the weight off. I was not happy with my job, so I had stress going on there. I found another job. I focused on me. He and I actually tried marriage counseling,
Mm-hmm.
but we spent marriage counseling with him essentially just trying to tell the counselor what he thought I wanted to hear.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't want to hear anything
Mm.
at that point. I was done.
Because at this point, you're done.
I was done. Mentally, I was done with this. Um, I think I lasted maybe 3 sessions with the marriage counselor. I was spending my lunch breaks going to this, these sessions. And finally, I looked at the marriage counselor. I was like, what if I just don't want to be married anymore?
Mm.
And, he was taken aback. Even the counselor was taken aback because I used some very colorful words when I said that. And so it was like, I just don't want to be married no more. And I start focusing on me. And then
Mm.
it started even getting worse because he realized he couldn't get a rise out of me anymore. I
Mm.
wasn't going to argue with you no more.
Mm.
I wasn't going to do anything. So then I didn't realize I was getting stalked in my own home. I would call my best friend and me and her would talk because he worked third shift. And when he'd leave off work, I felt like I was, free to talk
Mm.
about what was going on to my best friend. She lived down in Tennessee at the time. But then 2 days later, he's repeating back
What y'all
some of our
conversation was?
conversation was. So it was just like, okay, what's going on here? Well, then she had um, moved back. This was by this time it's 2005. She had moved back. Me and her decided to have a girls' night out. Not something I got to do. I had stopped hanging out with my friends. That was the first thing he did. Isolated me from all of my friends. Me and my friends used to rent gyms and play basketball together. We used to get together, me and a few of my friends all had children within a month of each other. So we were moms all at the same time. So we did mommy dates, that
Mm.
type of thing. But he isolated me from all of my friends in the first few years. Um, I have a lot of male friends. I coached. Said I'm the athlete. So it wasn't, you know, anything inappropriate. I just knew a lot of people.
Mhm.
But I didn't really have anyone to go to at this point or to talk to. And that
Mm.
friend down in Tennessee was the only person I ever really got a chance to talk to anybody about anything. So I just, it's like, I got to get out of this. I got to get out of this. But everyone else is, well, you got the house, you got the kids, I'm miserable,
Mm.
and I just started trying to focus on me. And he couldn't get
Mm.
a rise out of me anymore. And that used to bother him
Mm.
because I wasn't about to argue with you about anything. I went and did what I had to do. I went to work, I took care of the kids. I even started bowling. Um, Probably like 1998, I started in a women's bowling league, mind you.
Mm.
That was supposed to be my night out. I bowled with my mom. Okay. And there was always an excuse of why him and the kids needed to come with me. I
Mm.
couldn't even have that night to myself. I couldn't go to the grocery store by myself. He would
Wow.
call me 20 times a day at work, just to see what I was doing. He would show up with lunch, call me, and like, I got lunch for you. I don't eat lunch. I'm too busy to be eating lunch. Um, there was just always something. When I
Mm.
started losing the weight, a friend of mine introduced me to a guy in the building that she knew that trained, and I hadn't been like in a gym regularly in a long time. And so he's like, well, just come to the Y. I go on on our lunch break. I'll show you some things, that you can do to help you get in the shape that you want to get in.
Mhm.
He showed up there at the
Wow.
gym wanting to confront this guy. I'm not, and the guy's like, I'm just a trainer. That's it. He was
Mm.
engaged to someone else. It was like, there's like nothing there. I just couldn't be friends with someone.
I,
And finally, in March of 2005, me and the best friend went out for a girls' night. he had convinced my cousin to go out too. And essentially they were just trying to figure out where we were. Because me and her bar hopped around town. He ended up at the same nightclub that we were at. And actually, initially, I was excited. I'm like, now I had somebody to dance with at the nightclub. And so it's like, okay. And then we had me, my cousin, and the best friend. We had went to high school together. So we had a lot of the same friends. And we ended up running into one of those friends. And a reunion was about to happen. So we're talking about that. Well, after we got home, I had driven. So we all came back to my house. And my cousin had drove. So we all came back to my house for, to get cars and whatever. And so we were all sitting in the living room talking, chatting it up about the night. Well, I got a phone call on my cell phone. I stepped out in the hallway adjacent to the living room, and it was one of the classmates that we had saw at the club. Hey, I'm just making sure you guys got home okay. I'm like, oh yeah, we're sitting here talking in the living room. He's like, okay, I'll talk to you guys later. Bye. That was it. That was the conversation. My best friend decided she was going to stay the night. She didn't feel like she was up to driving. It's like 2:00 in the morning at this point. She didn't feel like she was up to driving home. So I got her settled on the couch. Didn't notice that my ex-husband had taken my phone and went back into our bedroom. Well, when I got her settled and walked into our bedroom, he came at me with his hands around my throat. And he got to mumbling something, and I'm really not sure because I'm just trying to get my bearings. And our bedroom and then dining room was like a WWF match in there. We was rumbling and tumbling and everything. And he wasn't a small man. My ex-husband's about 6'2", about 220, something around there. Really a small guy. And I just told him, like, I can't do this anymore. Police got called. The children had called my dad and my second mom, my stepmom. They came to the house. Well, when the police got there, my best friend is yelling at my ex-husband. He's yelling back at her, and I'm just staring him down. Because in all actuality, I'm plotting. I'm plotting my revenge at this point. And because he had, any other time it had been an argument or something.
Right.
But for me just to walk into, that. And I was like, yeah, nope, he got to go. And police get called. Police start yelling at me because I'm the calm one. And so I cussed at the police, and I get carried out in handcuffs and set in the back of the paddy wagon. My dad gets there. My dad goes into the house, but my dad has my dad's ear. And I don't think he's telling my dad. She has some man calling her in the middle of the night and all this other type of stuff. And I'm like, I'm in the paddy wagon at this point. But they let my dad come in the back of the paddy wagon. I didn't do it. My dad's like, well, he's saying some man. I'm like, is that what this is about? The guy that he just sat across for 2 hours called to make sure we were home okay? Well, he never asked the guy who it was. He just called the number back. He took my phone and called the number back and just heard a man's voice. Right. Never asked who it was. But the writing was on the wall. He had to go. This was my house. I bought this house. I had worked hard to buy this house, on my own and everything. I'm like, he has to go. Well, he actually went home with my dad. No one got arrested that night.
Your ex-husband went home.
My ex-husband went home with my dad. My dad actually brought him back a couple days later. Are you guys going to work this out? I'm like, absolutely not. I'm done. I'm plotting. I studied serial killers in college. I'm plotting my revenge right now. I don't even think y'all understand how the dark place that I'm in right now. And a couple days later, he calls me at work. You're really not going to work this out? I'm like, do you have a death wish? And so, well, I'm going to go back to Chicago. Well, you know what? I called him back. Anyway, there's a ticket waiting on you. Have your stuff out my house before I get home from work.
Wow.
And so he moved back to Chicago, back with his parents. And this was, like I said, was March of 2005. Eventually, it took me about 6 months to get out of that dark place. And then he was begging to come back because the boys were playing football and he wanted to come watch them play and all this other type of stuff. So he started coming back to Columbus regularly to see the kids. And in the meantime, trying to, see what I'm doing. I was done. I'm just trying to figure out how I'm going to do this on my own. That's what
Right.
I was going to do. I got
Right.
4 kids. I'm just trying to figure out how to do this on my own.
Right.
I had to give up my house. I had to move in with my mom. Me and my 4 kids moving in with my mom. I'm, 34 years old. Well, actually 33 at that point when I moved back in with her. And it was just a lot. But I didn't find out till later when he was coming back in town. He was going through, remember how your cell phone had every number you call?
Right. Right.
Well, he was getting my cell phone records and calling every number that my number called.
Wow.
We found out later he was coming back in town and at times that we didn't know he was coming back in town. By the spring of 2006, all of a sudden, all this craziness starts happening. I wake up one morning and my mom's like, Miss, somebody then spray painted on your van. I had a minivan. Stop effing with my man, B.
Wow.
And he was there that weekend. But none of us thought, my mom is thinking, who man you trying to talk, who man you messing with? I'm like, I'm trying to get rid of one. I ain't messing with nobody.
Right.
I know a lot of people. I even called my friends that I had saw out that weekend. You got some crazy chick to think, me and you or
Right.
something? Nothing. And then he went on back to Chicago. I did what I had to do. 2 weeks later, my van got hit. And it was just a teenager who didn't know what they were doing, ran a stop sign. But I couldn't afford to rent a car at the time. And I had to go to Cincinnati for an AAU tournament with my son. So I called my ex-husband. He's like, I'll just come down. We'll take my car. So he drove from Chicago here. We went down to Cincinnati. When we got down there, he got mad because I wouldn't sleep in the same bed with him. I gave him and my son the bed. I took the sofa bed. So he got mad at that. So when we got back in town, he had a whole attitude. I'm leaving. Bye. I'm getting a rise out of me no more. An hour or so later, he's calling me. I'm getting sleepy. You need to keep me up. At this point, I had went to meet up with a friend that I hadn't seen this was at this point, I think it was May, June, something like that, of 2006. I hadn't seen this man in person since January. We get to sharing our, stories, what he going through, what I'm going through. We're sitting in my van outside of his shop. My ex-husband is calling me, and he keeps calling me. I ain't got time to talk to you. If you tired, pull over to a rest stop, go sleep. I ain't got nothing to do with that. Eventually, I turned off my phone. On the way back home, realized I turned my phone off. And he had like 8 voicemail messages. The last voicemail message was, you need to get your ass home. Your van is on fire. And I'm first thinking I'm driving my van, but I was driving my old van. because the insurance agents couldn't see the van that got hit until Monday,
Right.
Sunday. And sure enough, I pull up in my mother's house and I looking down the alley and there's fire trucks, all this other type of stuff, whatever. My van was ruined.
Mm.
It was the inside was completely burnt out. Some of the windows had burst, everything else like that, because I had parked that van in the carport next to the garage.
Mm.
So now, and then the same thing is spray painted on the garage wall and on the back door. Stop effing with my man.
Wow.
Still, none of us are thinking it's him. My mom's upset because they had been trying to call me. I had forgot I had turned my phone, off. Um, she's not, I'm protecting some man. I'm like, I ain't protecting nobody. I gave them officers my phone here. It's like, you can go through any number in there and, figure this out because I want to figure this out too.
Mm-hmm.
So that was June. Me and my mom get to arguing back and forth because she's still thinking I'm protecting somebody. My mom always thought I was real naive when it came to men, but she loved my ex-husband.
Mm.
And eventually I moved with my dad. My dad was like, why don't you and your mom take a break? You and the kids come and stay with me. A couple weeks after that, my dad's like, why don't you go out, miss? You've been cooped up in the house because I got put on lockdown after the fire. I couldn't go anywhere but work and back. And I had to call my dad when I was going to work and when I was coming home.
Mm.
I couldn't do nothing. But after a couple weeks, my dad, why don't you go out? Why don't you call, your girlfriend? Yeah, why don't you go out? Okay. Well, I had to go through the whole insurance thing, got a new van. 5 days after the new van, somebody vandalized it again. But the kicker was, no one knew that I'd moved up to my dad's. I didn't tell anybody but him.
Mm.
And the girlfriend from work that, she was my partying buddy, would follow me home because we're trying to figure out how somebody is even finding out where I live.
Mm.
But there was also a letter left on the windshield. I opened up the letter, I read a few lines, I folded it up, I gave it back to my dad. I'm like, can you take the kids to school? I got to clean this mess off my car and get to work. I got a busy day. My dad calls me at work. He's like, you know who it is, don't you? I'm like, yeah, it's Derek. And he's like, yeah, we suspected because there was another letter left at your mom's house saying that they knew you had moved here.
Mm.
And everyone knew I didn't tell anybody.
Wow.
So at that point, I told him it was time for me to file for the divorce. I had already at this point had him signed a separation agreement. I worked for the legislature. I'd worked there for over 20 years. I was surrounded by attorneys. I knew how to write just
Right.
about any brief if possible. So I wrote it up, so I had him sign it, got it notarized. The only thing I needed to do is go file it. And he begged and pleaded, let's work this out. Let's work this out. No, this one's over. My dad had made me promise that I wouldn't tell him that I knew it was him. A couple weeks later, he's in town. He's begging, pleading, let's go back to counseling. No, I'm done. At this point, I had also found a house that, I felt like I could afford. Me and the kids is, enough for me and the kids, everything. The weekend after Labor Day that year of 2006, I had a very busy weekend. I was a statistician for a football team. Well, a couple different football teams. I had a football game Friday night. I had a football game Saturday morning. The semi-pro team asked me to do their stats Saturday afternoon. I'd already had plans to go out with my girlfriends Saturday night. So by Sunday, I was dog tired. I had gotten all of about 6 hours of sleep since Thursday because Friday night, my youngest son was playing around with a kid and got a gash across his face and needed stitches. So I spent all of Friday night into Saturday morning at Children's Hospital. So by Sunday night, I was exhausted. I'm doing laundry. He's calling me, and he called me from his work phone. So I knew he was in Chicago Sunday morning, asking how, my youngest son had did, our youngest son had did in his game, how he was doing with the stitches, everything. I'm like, he's fine, he's fine. I'm about to go to a basketball tournament. I'll call you later. That night, this is after 11 o'clock that night, I'm up watching a football game, folding laundry. My oldest son had brought me the last load out of the dryer. I'm folding those. My youngest two children were asleep, and it was very crowded in my dad's house. Because my brother, his wife, and their son was also staying there because he had just got home from deployment. But they had my brother his family had already gone up to bed. And the youngest two had slept in the family room where I was folding the clothes. So they were like 5 feet away from me, sleep. I dozed off. I don't know how long it was, but eventually I woke up to orange and red colors. I couldn't see anything but this orange and red. And I guess I screamed. And my oldest son, the twins were 15 at this time, he heard me scream, but initially he said he thought I was screaming at the television. Because it's something I did. It was a football game. But then he realized the second time he heard me scream, that wasn't
Right.
scream at the television scream. He said, and at that point he saw I had started moving around. And he said he saw the flames reflecting off of the wall. He was in the front room of the house. And he ends up coming, meets me there at like the center hallway, pushes me out. I'm on fire. Pushes me out the front door, rolls me around on the ground to get the fire out, got the garden hose, everything, but then runs back in trying to figure out what started the fire. Well, he pushed me right past his twin sister. And it wasn't until my brother, of course, they hear the commotion. They come downstairs to see what's going on. He comes out to my aid. At this point, I'm laying face down in the front yard. I hear my daughter say, "My mom is on fire." And she was on with the 911. Everyone's crying. There's a lot of commotion going on, everything else like that. But eventually I start blacking out. I remember seeing the paramedics get there initially, but before I blacked out before they got to me. I was rushed to the hospital. I was told later that I said something about the lamp against me in the ambulance, but I flatlined on the way to the hospital. I flatlined again when I got to the emergency room. The investigators are talking to my family, they're talking to the neighbors, they're talking to everyone. Could she do this to herself? Because as soon as I got to the emergency room, they could smell the lighter fluid on me. And at this point, I'm out. They induced me into a coma. I was in that coma for 26 days. He actually called my daughter looking for me. I tried to call your mom on her phone. I can't get her. And she's completely incoherent. She's just saw her mom on fire. She's completely incoherent. Then he calls my second mom. They were rushing home. And she's like, I don't know what's going on. I'm trying to get to the house. My sister, who's feeling helpless, was living in Georgia, in Atlanta at the time, because she went to college there. So she's calling herself being helpful by calling him because everyone's thinking he's driving from Chicago. So try to keep him calm. They said he walked into the hospital about 6:30 in the morning, and they said my dad went after him. Like, I know you got something to do with this.
Wow.
But keep in mind, he and I are still married. So he
Mm.
is my next of kin. The
Mm.
hospital could not keep him from seeing me. So my
Mm.
dad, they had to think of other ways. My dad filed a protection order against him. So as long as my dad was near me, he couldn't be near me.
Mm.
Um, my mom had to file for immediate custody of the children because he tried to take them with him. Um, it wasn't until they got phone records that it solidified that he was 6 minutes away from the house, 6 minutes after the 911 call went out.
Wow.
My sister, feeling like she was helpless by calling him, keep trying to keep him calm on the road, was pretty much the nail because it was just bouncing off towers around Columbus. And he had drove out like as far as past Dayton, um, almost to the Ohio-Indiana border, and then back in.
Mm.
Um, they determined that he actually got in town about 8 o'clock that night. And then back up. Before I dozed off, he had called me asking whether or not I was going out that night. And I'm like, I don't know, but I'm trying to do this laundry. I'll call you back later. You know,
Right.
I wasn't trying to talk to him that much. I didn't already realize he's doing all this crazy stuff. I really wasn't
Right.
trying to talk to him. And he had to have been out in the backyard watching. Like I said, I didn't go to sleep. I dozed off to sleep. They actually said I probably had my arms folded and just, dozed
Right.
off to sleep like that. Well, I suffered third-degree burns to a third of my body, my face, my hands, my arms, my chest. I had on a tank top and jeans. So essentially the skin that was burned um, is the skin that was exposed is what was burned.
Mm.
I spent 3 months in the hospital. To date, I've had 36, 37 surgeries that were burn related. I just had my latest surgery in April of this year.
Wow.
And this happened 18 years ago.
Wow.
He eventually they did the investigation. He actually checked himself into the mental ward up at Ohio State University Hospital, but was able to check himself out. And his parents had drove into town trying to figure out what was going on, and they drove him back home to Chicago
Mm.
before the police could question him because they were
Right.
trying to question him at that point. Um, he eventually got arrested right after I came out of the coma because they actually came and told me when I woke up out of the coma, they came to talk to me. They were like, no, you did not set yourself on fire. This is what happened. We're about to go arrest your husband.
Mm.
Um, it wasn't until June of 2007. This happened September 10th of 2006. June of 2007, he decided to take a plea. And the plea agreement was 18 years. He was never looking at life. The only way he was looking at life is if I died.
Mm.
I did not trust juries. Keep in mind, I had worked with the courts and the legislature for almost 25 years. I did not trust juries. He could have got off with assault and would have did 3 years,
Mm.
in prison. Um, he could have got off. There could have been a sympathetic. He was very charismatic. You know, he could have gotten off. where someone just couldn't believe that he would do that, because
Mm-hmm.
there were people who felt like that. There's no
Mm-hmm.
way, especially his family, especially his mother. He always had you on this pedestal. That was part of the problem during our marriage, was him keeping me on this pedestal.
Mm-hmm.
So in the past 18 years, I tried to live the best life I could. I was off work for almost 2 years. I am forever going to be in debt. My first bill from the hospital was $980,000.
Mm-hmm.
And keep in mind, that was just for the time I was in the coma.
Wow.
I said I've had almost 40 surgeries. They range
Mm-hmm.
anywhere between $10 and $60,000 a pop.
Mm-hmm.
So to take care of kids, I've had to work 4 jobs, at a time, trying to just give them some type of normal life. But
Right.
it's crazy because a friend actually just asked me today, he was like, Miss, did you ever take time to grieve? And I was like, no, I didn't have time. I
Mm-hmm.
had to go straight back into mommy, in
Right.
mommy mode. I didn't have time to grieve. I didn't have time to grieve my former self. I didn't have time to grieve what actually happened. I didn't have time to grieve any part of it. I
Mm-hmm.
lost hearing in one ear and partial hearing in the other. Um, my left hand is doesn't bend. My fingers don't bend on my left hand, so I have limited use for it. Every day, I'm reminded
You're
about
reminded of
of
that
what
day.
happened of that day. My
Yeah.
PTSD got the very best of me this year, because now I'm also having to deal with the fact that he was getting out of prison.
So he did his 18 years.
He did his 18 years. He was released on September 20th
Mm-hmm.
of this year. Um, they did set it up where he is serving his parole, or probation, whatever, in Chicago. He has no family here. He has no friends here. Um, so he is serving his probation in Chicago. I was able to get a protection order in
Good.
place, but that was a fight. I was initially told that I probably wouldn't get it because so much time had passed.
Yes.
And,
Mm-hmm.
he and I didn't allow him to contact me, you know, for the
Right.
past, 10 years or so. I didn't allow him to contact me, but he was still talking to the kids. They're adults now. Um, and then I found out he was trying to justify what he did
Right.
by saying, oh, well, there was infidelity on both sides, referring to a date that I went on with a guy in 1997.
Trying to justify it.
Justify, like anything
Mm-hmm.
could justify you setting me on fire. Because what it did is that he had actually taken off a lock off of the Florida room, in my dad's house, and taken off a lock on one of the windows. That's how he gained entry. He had actually bought the materials from his job using his employee card to do so. He bought the gloves, the lighter fluid, the long lighters that people use for,
Yes.
candles or, grills,
Yes.
one of those. He borrowed a flask from his roommate. He had moved in with a childhood friend at that point. Um, had borrowed a flask. That's what he put the lighter fluid in.
Mm-hmm.
And he had bought this stuff on the Thursday prior. He had
Wow.
actually came in town the Saturday before it happened. This happened on a Sunday night. That Saturday, he actually had come in, phone records show that he was in town, but he couldn't catch up with me because me and my friends had went out that night. I had parked my van at one location and we bar hopped in my girlfriend's car.
Mm-hmm.
And so he could never catch up with me. And remember, he was at work Sunday morning. So this was all planned out for him. He had planned this. And so I'm dealing with a lot of PTSD now.
Mm.
That's what I referenced the last 4 months.
Right, right. I saw you mentioned that. It's
Yeah,
been rough.
it's been rough. I wanted to die this summer.
Wow. Wow.
Um, because thinking of a life with him walking free was just overwhelming.
Mhm.
You know, his bills have been paid for the past 18 years. um, it was just a lot. I didn't know how to feel.
Right.
So
What would you say, Miss, to the woman that's listening to you that might be in a similar situation? What would you say that when you see those red flags? Because when you was talking about yelling at you from your family, from your friends, all of those
hindsight
are
was
those
everything.
would you say those are red flags? What
I
would you
learned
say
more
red flag?
about, the signs, not realizing I was living those
Yes.
signs. The alienation from family and friends. Sometimes it's flattering. Oh, they want me all to themselves.
Mm-hmm.
And in some ways it can be.
Mm-hmm.
But let's see what degree, it is. The insecurity that they play a part in. Now,
Mm-hmm.
keep in mind, yes, we got in shoving matches and everything else like that throughout our marriage, but never did he threaten to kill me.
Right, right, right,
He threatened to
right.
kill himself
Mm.
when he knew I was, had kind of checked out mentally from,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
um, but watch what those who threaten to kill themselves usually have no issues with taking you with them,
Mm.
because initially that was what I was told. He had told someone that the plan was to kill me, kill himself, and then kill himself.
Wow.
Um, the verbal abuse that I got, I had no idea where my twin's father was. Um, and that used to be always thrown in my face. He had moved out west somewhere. I didn't have no contact with him afterwards, but that always got thrown in my face during our marriage.
Mm.
Um, I didn't dress enough ladylike. I coached 4 different sports. I constantly in jeans and tennis shoes. You know, I dressed up when I had to work.
Right,
Outside of work, I'm not dressing up.
right, right, right.
And but there was that. He got that from his dad sometimes, though. Um,
Mm.
I was very strong headed. So there was that defiance there.
Mm.
Um, it was just, to anybody who's listening, just look for the signs.
Mm.
Tell somebody. Find somebody
What I
to
was getting
talk
ready to
to.
say because you've mentioned first that
I didn't feel like I had anybody to
you didn't
talk
feel
to.
like you had anybody to talk to.
I
So
was
I always
embarrassed.
embarrassed. So I always try to find somebody that you can confide in.
It
Did he
took me a
did
long
he
time to even share the story because I was embarrassed. When people would ask me, "Oh, how'd you get burned?" So it might have been a house fire or something like that. I was
mm,
embarrassed initially because I chose this man,
mm-hmm,
even how I got burned. But what I try to tell people is find out what motivates you and think about that. My motivation has always been my children, and I didn't want them to have to think that this was normal
mm,
anymore.
mm-hmm,
It took that last instance. It took me a long time to realize that, but it was really, I had checked out and knew I was done with the marriage probably around 2001.
mm-hmm,
But it took me another 4 years to feel like I'm just going to have to deal with the consequences of whatever.
mm-hmm,
I ask people, don't judge. If you find out, if you have a friend that's come to you, um, most domestic violence victims won't leave unless they know they have somewhere to go.
Mm-hmm.
Not everyone has that, friend or home or, parents' house to go back with, especially if they have kids that they could go stay with. There's a financial issue to it. Even though I
Mm-hmm.
made a little more than him, we were still a two-income household.
Family, right.
So I had to factor all of that
Mm-hmm.
into it. So I just ask people, just don't judge
Mm-hmm.
on, don't ever think that they're choosing to
Mm-hmm.
just stay in it because they like getting hit or like, the
Mm-hmm.
situation they're in.
Mm-hmm.
Most victims will not leave until they realize it could be better away from it. There's
Mm-hmm.
always those honeymoon. When I talk about these instances that occurred between me and my ex-husband, we could go years in between those incidents. This was not something that was every day.
Right, right, right. Did
You
he
know,
ever did he ever acknowledge when y'all got into it, or he pushed you because y'all was just pushing and
oh, it was,
shoving?
because I
Did
actually had him arrested a few times.
Oh, okay. I was gonna ask, did he ever
I actually had
say,
him
I'm
arrested a few
sorry?
times. But hear me, being the person that I am and the connections that I had, he was trying to get a job with the courts here. And I actually used my connections to help get those arrests expunged from his record.
Hmm.
That came back to bite me when it came time from his sentencing, because it didn't look like there was a history
Hmm.
of domestic violence on his part.
Wow. Wow.
So there was a lot. I realized, don't stay for the kids.
Hmm.
My kids are dealing with their own trauma in what they saw. Um, when I got out, my oldest two were, quick tell me they didn't realize how unhappy I was until we were separated for a year and a half before the attack.
Hmm.
And they didn't realize until I got out of that, and put him out and saw me happy,
Happy. Yes.
that they didn't realize how unhappy I was. And
Mm.
even friends, it was a different me. I
Hmm.
joke about it because I'm like, that divorce diet was beautiful. I had gotten those 100 pounds off and then some, but it was mostly because I was working out 6 days a week to deal with stress.
Right, right.
So I
Mm.
just, like I said, when it comes to, a person's not going to leave until they're ready to leave. They're going to hit that part, just, if you have someone or know someone that's in this situation, or you're in that situation yourself, share it with someone, make a plan to get out. It might not be immediate, but make a plan and make sure there's a safety plan put in place. Because, as with me, most domestic violence victims are at the most risk of getting harmed or killed when they try to leave,
Hmm.
after they leave, because the abuser feels like they've lost control.
Hmm.
And that's exactly what my ex-husband did.
Hmm. Wow.
Despite all of this, it took me a long time to get there. I do believe in love. It took me a long time to get there.
Mm.
I even believe in marriage because I've seen wonderful examples around me.
Mm.
Just make sure you're doing it for the right reason.
Mm.
Like I said, he was everybody else's choice.
Mm.
And I fought for the facade of the family. It wasn't
Hmm.
the person.
Was in person.
He
Mm.
wasn't my person.
Mm. Mm.
So, I actually just saw something to talk about, a lot of times we don't bring God into our marriages until the wedding.
Mm.
And then even then he's only a guest.
Mm.
And so it's
You
like
you perfectly said that.
that. So just make sure it's, you know, that God has truly led you to that person.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
Mm-hmm. When you all was dating, did you ever feel that insecurity, or you felt it after?
oh, I felt it because we actually didn't get married until 2000.
Mm-mm. Oh, that's right, because y'all moved in together.
Yeah, we didn't get married until 2000, and we started, dating in 93. And but we had he had proposed to me a couple times. A couple times I turned him down. And
Mm,
then, I we got a lot of flack from both sides of the family. Y'all shacking up, you're doing this, you're doing that, you need to get married, whatever. So when I got pregnant with my youngest daughter, I'm like, all right, let's do it.
let's go ahead and do it.
Let's go ahead and do it. I should have
Mm,
known something was going to come about it because we was here in Ohio. We got married February 26th of 2000. February in Ohio. And it was 85 degrees on the day we got married.
in
80
Ohio?
in Ohio.
Wow.
85
It
degrees.
was
I should have known it
it
was going to be,
it was hot.
it was hot.
Wow.
So I should have
Wow.
known that that was a sign just there.
Wow.
But it was just, like I said, there is life after tragedy. We are
Mm-hmm.
not always dealt the hands that we think we are, are owed or
Mm-hmm.
even want.
Mm-hmm.
Um, it's all about what you do after and how you handle that tragedy afterwards. Like I said, for the past, I won't say 18, because the first three I was having back to back surgeries and everything else. So the past 15 years, I've been trying to live my best life,
Mm-hmm.
doing the things I do, got the kids. All of my children are now college graduates, got
Wow.
them to where they need to be. Statistically, we were not supposed to be in the position that we were in.
Right, right, right,
Single mom raising four kids. No, we were
right,
not supposed to be
right.
where we were. But, me trying to do things that I hadn't done,
Mm,
travel out of the country, do those things I've been able to do the last few years,
wow.
leave the job that I really stayed on only because I felt like I had to,
Right,
that
right.
security of it.
Mm. Well,
It's
Miss,
how I'm sorry.
I I was just getting ready to round it up.
Okay.
I just want to say that I have enjoyed your story, and I know that the listeners have. And I think that you have really answered questions in people's mind as to what happened, how it happened, and also the importance of those watching those signs and knowing those signs. And that's very important that you said find you someone that you can talk to.
Hmm.
And you brought up another thing that you said, that it wasn't that you was like abuse, the reason you wasn't getting out of it. There could be a number of reasons why a person stay. It could be children, finance, all those different things. Because sometimes you think of, why she kept staying there? Well, why she, and like
There
you
has to be a
said,
choice.
yes, and like you said, there are many reasons why, you know.
Yeah.
So I appreciate you this. I appreciate my listeners for listening. And I know there was so many great takeaways. I hate that you had to go through this, but I salute you. I actually salute the story and where others were here. And I know a lot of people will oh my internet. It's in my internet. Why my internet trying to
Yeah, you
go out?
froze there for a little bit.
Yeah, but anyway, it's probably just recording
It circles back to the title. I
to your
always tell
title.
people, I see the cat behind me.
I
Um,
saw.
It was actually other people who told me I'm a walking
Walking
testimony
testimony. And you said God
of
blocked it.
life.
And when you said God blocked it, that is so, God blocked, God actually
Well,
blocked.
that was, yeah. I had someone tell me it was, said my relationship with God and everything else like that has been ups and downs because I was mad at God for a long time. I did not
I
deserve
can
this.
understand.
Um, but said one pastor told me, it's like, well, maybe what happened to you wasn't about you.
Hmm.
And maybe it happened for you to be, he knew you could handle it.
Right.
Um, I wasn't put in a position to help others. The fact that I am this walking testimony,
Yes.
there is life after tragedy.
After tragedy.
There
Yes.
is life after being in a, abusive relationship.
Yes.
There is
Yes.
life.
There is.
And so I just try to encourage women and men who
Right.
find themselves in that relationship to just think about what you want your life to be and pray on
Mhm.
it.
Right.
But be
Right.
very specific in your prayers.
Hmm.
What you want.
Very,
Very
very,
specific.
very specific.
So,
This episode, normally I only do my episodes where they post twice a month,
okay.
the second and the fourth Wednesday. But because I'm doing breast cancer awareness and domestic violence, I'm doing them doing this month a little different. So this particular episode will post Friday, October the 25th.
Okay.
It will be on Spotify. You'll get a link and you can share the link. I'll share, but I'll be sharing the flyer. The flyer will be out tomorrow, probably
Okay.
tonight. Probably tonight. I'm probably gonna post the flyer tonight, and
Okay.
to so people know when it's supposed to air and how to get to
Hmm.
see this episode. But I just want to say that I thank you so much. I appreciate you. I appreciate you. I appreciate you to the highest, and know that God hadn't forgot you. He's still with you. He's still with. And I know this month been hard since he got now, because I think I talked to you the last time we talked was the
Hmm.
night before he was going to get out the next day, and you was
Yeah.
having a little anxiety then. But I appreciate your boldness. I appreciate you so 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 much. But I will be getting the link out there, and you just spread the link so people will know. And
I
I
will.
encourage and I encourage the listeners, don't just listen, share it with somebody. And the person don't say, no, she don't need to hear this shit. You never know.
Never know.
You can't look at a victim
And
and
that
tell
was the
that they
thing. And I have to remind people that because I was that person. I did not look like a
didn't look
victim.
like what you was going through.
Exactly.
So share the episode, share the episode. Once again, Miss, I want to say thank you, and we will be talking.
All right.
Thank you so very much. You enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank
Listeners,
you.
thank you so much for tuning in. You will be able to catch the episode on Spotify, on Apple Podcasts, and also on the YouTube channel, Women Majoring in Their Marriage. Ladies, as I always say, always try to leave a person better than you found. Y'all have a great rest of your day. Love you, Miss.
Love you too. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you so much for joining us for this episode of the Women Majoring in Marriage podcast. If you're enjoying the show, please feel free to like, subscribe, leave a review, or comment. All that good stuff that helps other folks like you find the podcast. Please come back every month on the second and fourth Wednesday for new episodes. You can also find Janice on our website, www.janicevance.com, where you can order her book, Women Majoring in Marriage. And for more fun content, be sure to check out our Facebook group at Women Majoring in Their Marriage. Also, if you have any questions or would like to reach out, feel free to send us an email at themarriagemajor@gmail.com. Thanks again for tuning in, and we'll catch you in the next episode.